what you came for. Lightning strikes every time she moves, and everybody's watching her, but she's looking at you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Marcy Offner, CAMX Steering Committee member.
Good afternoon, everybody. You know, looking out at this is a great view of CAMX that only a few lucky people get to see. I get a chance to see everybody's face, and I think I'm just going to take a moment. Everybody smile. Okay? You know, this is going to end up on social media later, so... All right. Check your Twitter feed later. I am really delighted to be here today moderating this panel and introducing you to some very interesting individuals. As you all know, social media has become part of our everyday lives, and most of us use it in some shape or form at various times throughout the day. But how can we as professionals and as part of the composites and advanced materials industry benefit from social media? And what might we be missing out on if we're not using it today? This panel of pros is impressive. We've selected individuals who are using social media personally to brand themselves, to brand their projects and their companies, and most importantly, to brand composite materials. I know they'll have some interesting insights, some views to share, and ultimately we hope you'll find some inspiration as you head back to your places of business this week. So let's get started. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Jennifer, in thinking about social media, excuse me, I have to get my pages in order. What advice do you have for others when using social media to work on various projects?
Well, thank you, Marcy, so much for inviting me to be on this panel. So I work at Air Force Research Lab, and I've been there for about 14 years. And I'm an engineer and program manager, and throughout those years, I've had a great opportunity to work on a lot of different programs. One that I worked on recently is a public-private partnership called America Makes. It's one of the first institutes in the Manufacturing USA Institute initiative. And when we first launched that, we knew that we had to reach out to a lot of our stakeholders that were involved. It's a consortium model, so there's about 200 member organizations involved. So we had to come up with a very multifaceted communication strategy, and social media was a big part of that, to be able to reach out to the public as well as all of those organizations. So one thing that we found that's a great way to tell our story is being able to use video to do that. So we created a series of videos called America Makes Moments, and these were just 30-second to 3-minute videos that highlighted some of the technical work that was going on. So why are videos so great? I think people on social media have a relatively short attention span, so being able to give them a quick snapshot of the technology that's being developed is really important. Back at my home organization, AFRL, we've also been able to make great use of video through social media as well. We have a series of YouTube videos called AFRL Inspire, and they highlight scientists and engineers that are working on Air Force applications within the laboratory. And again, it's a great way to be able to reach out and tell that story to your stakeholders, within the Air Force as well as the public. So great way to use video to be entertaining and memorable and get your story out there of your technology.
Great, thank you. That is a great insight. Video is going to be very important in our future communication tools. Jeff Sloan, how can individuals use social media to advocate the use or to profile composite materials?
Great question, Marcy.
You're welcome.
Hi, everybody, and thanks for having me here. As I think everybody in this room knows, composites are pretty complex. This is a highly dynamic industry, and we're dealing with complex structures which use a variety of different resin types and fiber types and manufacturing methods and tooling types. And because of that, there's a lot of change in this industry, and keeping up with that change is difficult. And what I think everybody needs to understand is that you, within your company and you as a person, have a great deal of knowledge and understanding about how composites are used and applied. And you can use social media, I think, to emphasize your capabilities and to emphasize your expertise and to help the wider world, not just the composites world, but the wider manufacturing world, understand how composites are being used. And you can do this because you have in-house expertise, you have subject matter experts who can talk to how composites are used and applied and processed. And there is an educational value in that, and that can do a couple things for you. I think it helps your company because it shows that you've got some expertise, and it also can help your audience, whoever your audience is. So it's real customers or potential customers. And there has to be, though, a utility aspect to this. It has to be high utility information, educational information, information designed to help. I think a lot of us look at social media as purely a promotional tool. You're promoting yourself or your company, and I think a lot of us see it as a marketing tool, but it's not just that. It's a great way to communicate information. And that information can be derived from your website, it can be derived from your individuals. But again, because this is such a dynamic industry, and because all of us within our companies have people who know and understand composites really well, and the embodied knowledge within just this room and in this industry is tremendous. And any way you can use social media to share that, I think will help your company, will help you, and will help the broader industry at large.
Great, thank you. Brian, do you think we need to use social media in our businesses today?
I would say absolutely. You want people to know who your company is and what you're capable of before you even make that initial contact. And social media is a great way to do that. Much like a website, it's working for you 24/7, 365, and it can just help, like as he said, generate awareness, and people can go there and find out your capabilities and your expertise before you even reach out to them. And I think it's a great way to not only generate awareness about your company, but just composites as an industry.
Great. And Peter, in what ways have you used social media to engage your customers at Magnum Venus Products?
Thank you for that question, Marcy. Magnum Venus Products is a family-owned business that manufactures equipment. So the concept of using social media for us was a little bit gray. Why would we use something like that? And what we found successful is we can help not just our company, but the industry by telling a lot of stories. And it allows people to understand and see things that we see on a day-to-day basis with the customers that are represented here at the show, but then also with some of the interesting research being done around the industry that we've been able to partner with. And so one of the ways that we found to be successful is either blogging or using videos or reposting and resharing everybody else's stories. And by kind of tying together that web of experience throughout this room, we find that our brand begins to become more well-known and people are intrinsically motivated to reach out to us to understand more about the composites industry. So a lot of it has to do with not just telling our customers what we're doing, but telling people that may not necessarily know what composites are, that just happen to come to our website or to our social media account, a little bit more about what composites are and what they can do.
Okay, great. I have a couple of follow-up questions. Brian, what advice would you give to a company who isn't currently using social media? Like, what's a good way to get started if you're a novice to it?
Literally just that, just to get started. I mean, identify which platforms you want to use, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, even Snapchat for some people, and just sit down and write out a plan of exactly what information you want to share, what maybe projects you have coming up in the future, and strategize what you would like to share and when, and get started from there.
Okay, great. And Jennifer, going back to the answer to your question, obviously video is becoming more and more important as we communicate with our customers, but a lot of us don't have big video production departments. We might just have our phones or a camera. Do we have to have really slick produced videos, or how do we get started implementing video into our social media communication?
Yeah, great question. So through the American Makes partnership, they are working with a small business that does do some of that video production work, but really, you can probably make these types of videos using a smartphone. The technology on phones nowadays is much more advanced than it was, and the video quality is pretty good. Really what's important about the video is having professionals that understand the technology and are passionate about talking about it, and being able to zoom in on a 3D printer or a composite fabrication machine, and being able to highlight that. So really, you don't need to have a lot of money or expertise.
Okay. Peter, what do you think we can do as an industry to improve the conversation about composites and advanced materials on social media? How can we, brand our industry out there?
That's a great question. Thank you. I think the call to the people here in this room is just, we're not talking about devoting a full time every second of your day. You got to hashtag something or tweet something. But when you find something interesting, other people will find it interesting as well. So just let them know. And if there's a way to be able to, a social media platform that you find the most easiest or the most intuitive to yourself, use it. There's a lot of stories going on in composites right now that are on the national level. Share them. It's just a little bit over a long period of time. It's not, you don't have to jump in every morning and spend 3 hours, although that would be helpful. But you can go and you find a cool story on whatever your favorite news outlet is, and it touches on composites, share it. Let your network know what you find interesting, because they're probably going to find it interesting too.
Jeff, obviously all of us are individuals working in the composites and advanced materials industry. We all have our own personal accomplishments that help build the brand of our industries. How can we use social media to brand ourselves while at the same time helping improve awareness about the composites and advanced materials industry?
Well, this industry is so diverse. We have so many different end markets that we serve, and we have so many different processes that we use, and we all have so many different experiences and levels of expertise. And one thing I'm constantly amazed by is the level and depth of knowledge within the industry. And I think a lot of us underestimate the amount of knowledge that we have, and that we can share that knowledge. And by sharing that knowledge, we can not only demonstrate our own capabilities, but we can help our employers. We can help the industry. And so I think there's you can benefit yourself by showing some of your expertise, and you can help your company as well. The other thing is that social media, going to one of the other questions, social media, I think we feel like social media has to, one of the comments was we have to have somebody who's devoted to doing social media and to reaching out, and that's just not true. As Jennifer said, we all have phones that are tremendously powerful, and we have the tools we have in our pocket to reach out to the wider world. And that's a huge advantage for us and for the industry. And so we need to use those tools and not be too worried about it. And the other thing I know is that the composites industry is inherently secretive. Like when we do a story for the magazine, the biggest problem we run into is that nobody wants to talk about it. Customer doesn't want us to talk about it. My boss doesn't want me to talk about it because it's proprietary information. And so I think that may be a factor too in preventing people from sharing information via social media. But the fact is, you can share expertise, you can share knowledge, you can share accomplishments without giving away that piece of proprietary information. And so I think you have to understand what you can put out there and how it can help you. But the amount of knowledge and intelligence we have, just everybody in this room, is I think, highly undervalued and can be a huge asset to all of us.
Great point. One more question, and anyone on the panel can answer this. Have you ever made a mistake on social media with a post or some content, and what did you do to correct that mistake? Jennifer, you're laughing a little too much.
I mean, you can go back and delete posts if you have made a mistake. That's a tricky one. I think it just depends on, you don't want to do things like start to argue with your customers or respond to a troll or anything like that. So I think just being careful with what you post and making sure that the content is correct is really important.
Definitely. And I think one thing I've learned is if a customer responds to a post, respond back quickly and appropriately, and
yes,
because they're trying to communicate with you. It is a communication tool after all.
And that showing timeliness and interest is important. Yeah.
Great. Well, we have a couple of minutes. If any of you have a question for our panel, we have a couple of microphones throughout the room. Feel free to step up. Or if you have a booming voice, feel free to yell out your question. We'd be glad to answer. Oh, I see Tom Dobbins coming up.
I can boom, but I'll use the microphone. So, you've touched on a lot of different areas. One of the areas actually the ACMA is looking at, thinking about is adding a membership recruitment capability out in the field. And how could we use social media, and how can other companies in this room use social media to help do workforce development?
Good question. Panel?
I'd like to jump in and take that one if I could. There's a need for workforce development in composites, and without kind of diving down deep into that rabbit hole, I think every single person in this room is feeling it right now. The ability to actually get qualified workers to show up sober, because most people are employed. And so we need, as an industry, to begin to engage with the universities and with the high schools and grammar schools to get them aware of what composites are. And all of these kids are on social media. And so begin engaging some of these high schools, begin engaging some of these colleges, and start sharing interesting stories with them. Those kids like that stuff. Iron Man's armor is made out of carbon fiber, right? I mean, they like that stuff. So they'll be interested to see it, but they don't know what composites are. And we need them to know what composites are before they get out of high school. Because when they start getting into college, if they don't hear about it there, they're going to graduate and they're going to go into a field that could be a macro competitor for the composites industry. And so then we're having to look for workforce now in whatever's left. And we're leading the industry in so much technology. We should be leading the industry in the employment. We should be at the top of the gate. We should be telling the kids right away, this is the cool place to go. This is where things are happening and changing. And so engaging on social media to share that message and really start at a local level, begin to support some of the high schools and colleges that have showed any kind of interest in composites.
Anyone else on the panel want to respond to that?
I've got a comment. One of the main challenges I think we face is that as an industry, for somebody outside the industry looking in or looking at composites manufacturing, it can be very difficult to comprehend. And if you're new to this industry, or if you're not familiar with composite materials, or if you're used to working with metals, everything you know about metals is completely opposite in the world of composites. And that's true for an engineer, and this is an engineer who's gone to college and has been trained. And so if you can imagine then trying to teach younger people what composites are and how important they are and how cool they are, I think it becomes much more difficult. But there are some baseline activities that we all do in our jobs that I think can be appealing to young people. We're all solving problems. We're all trying to be creative. We're all trying to work with teams to come and meet a challenge. And those are all things that I think appeal to a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. And so I think we have to worry less about trying to get somebody to buy into composites because composites are so cool, and get them to buy into the fact that we're meeting challenges. This is an advanced material that allows us to do things that have never been done before. and that we're working in teams, we're working together, and we're creative, and we're doing things that nobody's ever done before. And I think if you can emphasize that, then people can come to the composites later. But I think otherwise it's very, very difficult to get people to buy into composites as it is.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Scott.
Question, you look around the room and we obviously have young professionals, we have a middle-aged group, and then we have some that the hair color's turned a little bit different, or maybe it's not quite there. What would you suggest is the importance for addressing social media for composites and advanced materials with what are the lessons learned in the past? What have we learned, examples of lessons learned, mistakes that have made, things that didn't work, how to go forward, tricks of the trade?
Anyone? I know I can speak from my experience, maybe it'll spur some ideas here, is make it as easy as possible in your posts for the reader or, to access the information. Don't make them follow too many links. Make it readily available that they can click on it right away and get the video, get the photo, get the content. We're living in a fast-moving world, and everyone's using their mobile device, so we just need to make it easy. So I don't know if in your experience you find that as well.
We found that if you're not particularly live when it comes to social media and you have a harder time engaging there are services out there. We use a company called Market Scale out of Texas, and they do blogging content for us. That content becomes ours, and then we can use it to begin to share into other social media aspects. They're also going to produce video for us, and that's been a fantastic service. And so there are companies that are out there that can help assist in some of those social media avenues until you can get your feet under you and become more comfortable with it. It helped me. I'm not in all the social media circles. I've only found one that's particularly helpful for me, but I've used it. And so it's just using it a little bit over time.
And I would say that I think you have to determine which platform is best, because we've got Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, Snapchat, Reddit, for that matter, and there are a lot more. And I think it's easy to get overwhelmed and say, "Gosh, I need to be in all of them, and I need to have a presence there." And some platforms work better for companies than others. And so I think you need to develop some measurables and say, "Okay, I'm going to start with Facebook, and I'm going to do it every day for 3 months. I'm going to assess the results." And these are the kind of things we're going to post there and see what happens. For us at Composites World, Facebook is by far the most active social media platform that we have. And I think that's because a lot of people just get their news in general from Facebook, and it turns out they get their work news from Facebook. But that may not be true for your organization. And so I think you have to play with different ones and see what works for you. As I said earlier, it cannot be too promotional. People see right through that. If they feel like they're just being sold to, it's not helpful. So you want to provide educational information, something pithy, short, educational, has high utility, easily accessible. Those are the kind of things you want to target.
Okay, great. Well, I think that those were some great insights provided by our panel today. Thank you very much. And did we have one quick other question? Okay.
Questions. I probably should have raised my hand earlier. One of the things that I've learned from having children that are opposite ends of the educational spectrum, one that's a student, could do well anywhere, and another one who kind of wanders around and learns more by experience, is that the composites and the plastics industry, where I spend a lot of time, is really an art industry. There's a lot of learning on the job, and that appeals to people that are on that other spectrum, the people who need to have more of a hands-on experience. So in addition to social media, and Jeff, I agree with a lot of your comments about making it easier to understand. The other thing that we can do is go to our local community colleges, which are beginning to pick up a heavier load of education than the private universities and understand they're desperate to understand what they can do for the community that they're in. And so the more you understand what their capabilities are, so I'm just making a suggestion to the room as a whole, but also to the panel that group of people is social media. And so if you could somehow incorporate those two, we could help fill those jobs you're looking for.
Good point. Thank you very much for sharing that insight. And thank you for hearing us today.
This certainly was an interesting panel, and I think we can all benefit from a fresh perspective on using social media to provide that view, that critical view into our exciting industry for the future. Thank you, Marcy, for moderating this panel and each of the panelists. We certainly thank you for sharing your experiences and your insights on social media. And thank you all for attending today and for your participation in CAMX. On behalf of the committee, I ask that you all share your feedback with us through the survey you will receive after the event. The CAMX Steering Committee really does look at the survey results and implements changes based on your feedback. Finally, I hope to see you next year at CAMX 2018 in Dallas, where we will be co-locating with the Industrial Fabrics Association International. Take care and safe travels home.